It's Christmas morning, and my mom and my dad and my sister and I are all sitting around the Christmas tree opening presents. And it's my mom's turn to open the gift from my dad, and it's a large box, so I'm pretty excited. She opens the box, and there is a vacuum. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a really nice vacuum, right? And we needed a new one because we had this ancient Kirby and it weighed about 2,000 pounds and it was a real pain to use. So I'm sure my dad thought, well, we need a new vacuum and my mom needs a gift, so bingo. Meanwhile, my mom was less than thrilled to be receiving an appliance for a task she does not like to do. It's just that my dad's intention of the gift did not match my mom's interpretation, and therefore a slight conflict occurred. Now, I can happily say that it has all worked out, and in fact, my parents are here today in this room celebrating their 45th wedding anniversary. So rest assured, small conflicts can be resolved. However, what I've observed from this incident and many others over the years is that sometimes the intention of kindness does not match the recipient's interpretation, and therefore even the best intentions can cause a negative impact. Now, how and why can this be? Because we're actually just trying to be nice. And more importantly, how can we resolve this issue? Well, I believe it begins by examining our intentions, pausing to consider other possible interpretations, and then acting to create a positive impact. So first, we need to think about why we do kind things in the first place. We need to examine our intentions. We need to think about our motivations for our actions. And again, at first glance, this seems obvious because we want to make people happy. But if that were the case, then why is there conflict? Well, it's true that when we do kind things, we feel good about ourselves. However, when doing kind things, we need to start by taking ourselves out of the equation, because kindness isn't about ourselves, but about others. And this is called altruism. It's a difficult mindset to possess, but just like anything important, it must be practiced conscientiously. If our intentions are purely altruistic, then perhaps we'll be able to avoid conflict. Once we've examined our intentions, we need to pause and consider other possible interpretations of our kindness. Prior to being kind, we need to think about how the recipient would perceive this kindness. Now, one way to do this is to think about how another person feels valued. We've all heard the golden rule, treat others the way you would want to be treated. But perhaps we need to think about this with a new perspective. In their book, The Platinum Rule, Drs. Tony Alessandra and Michael O'Connor have written a new vision of this old adage in which they call the Platinum Rule. And they state that we need to treat others the way they would want to be treated. This is called empathy. In her book, Unselfie, Dr. Michelle Borba writes that perspective taking is the ability to think about another person's thoughts and feelings, wants and needs, and that this strategy allows us to step into another person's shoes and think about what another person is feeling and see the world from his or her point of view. So if we pause before we act and then think of others before ourselves, then perhaps we'll be able to avoid conflict and create a positive impact. Now let's take a look at this on a larger scale. As a society, we like to do kind things, especially during a tragedy or an emergency. But once again, we need to think about the intention of our kindness in helping and giving and donating with actual impact. Time after time, our well-meaning intentions can actually create what humanitarians call the second disaster. That's, for example, after the tragedy in Newtown, about 67,000 stuffed animals were sent to the families of the victims of the shooting as a gesture of comfort and support. But what was the town going to do with all of those stuffed animals as they were dealing with this aftermath of the shooting? A seemingly kind intention resulted in a disastrous impact because the residents had to figure out where to store these gifts and kind of ship them all away. Now, I'm in no way suggesting that we stop giving or caring, but I am suggesting that we pause and consider our own intention of kindness. In many cases, especially after a tragedy or a horror, acts of kindness can be done as an act of comfort for ourselves, with a short-sighted view of the very people we are trying to help. And in these cases, it is best to pause and research to find out who, what, where, and how we can do the most good, instead of doing what feels good. So, let's bring it back to how we can make our acts of kindness, both large and small, actually kind. First, examine your intention. Examine whether this act of kindness is for self-edification or for the recipient. Second, pause to consider other possible interpretations of this kind act. It can be difficult to realize that your actions may not have the positive impact you're looking for. But then finally, act altruistically and empathetically for maximum positive impact. I believe if we start looking at kindness with a more empathetic and altruistic view, we can change the world, one kind act at a time. Thank you.